Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. You're listening to one of the highest rated paranormal radio shows on Blog Talk. No bull, no lies, just a true platform for everyone to share their knowledge and experiences. When searching for the truth, good communication is key. Now, our phone lines are open for questions or stories. The number to call is 661-244-9831. Make sure you press the number 1 to get into the queue. We'll try to get to you as soon as we can. And otherwise, our chat room is open, so you can post any comments or questions there as well. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paranormal Review Radio. You'll find more articles, blogs, and full show uploads. And if you have specific comments, questions, or would like to be a guest on the show, email us at paranormal.review@aol.com. Now, sit back, get comfy, and prepare to open your minds. It's time for Paranormal Review Radio.
Well, the world is full of mysterious, unexplained phenomenon and unbelievable acts of terror, which are far more scarier than any Hollywood horror movie could ever dream of. We've reviewed many stories on our series of Scary Facts You Don't Want to Know, like Flesh-Eating Tribes, The Suicide Forest, Violet Jessup's Many Lives, and even a dog suicide bridge in England. But tonight we will uncover and review more horrifying true tales from around the world and from history that will chill your soul to the bone. Tonight Lucy and I have researched some stories from around the web that, yes, are scary and creepy, but also true and factual. It is undeniable that the stories may seem to be from a fictitious book, but I assure you they are all true and real. If you have a story to add that is true, but also horrifying in nature, give us a call here on the show at 661-244-9831. Make sure you press number 1 so that we can get you in queue and get you on air. Let's get ready for some true horror, mysterious, and downright scary facts. Lucy, what story is first on your list?
It's actually the people in Germany back in June of 1374 that suddenly started dancing in the streets. They were suffering from what's called the Forgotten Plague, dance mania, where they just all of a sudden just started dancing madly with no known cause. They just kept going. This started happening. Dancing. Absolutely dancing. It was a madness.
That's not horrific.
Well, when you think of the fact that they started dancing and they didn't stop. They kept going on and on. They did it for weeks. They did it for days. Some of these people dropped dead from the dancing.
Is that like Dancing with the Stars?
No. Well, this was in Aachen, Germany, and it happened in 1374. These people, the people on the streets started dancing. They reportedly started experiencing hallucinations. It was called people were calling it St. John's dance, the dance plague. The numbers of these people, it started with just a few, and it swelled up to thousands. So picture thousands of people just madly dancing in the street. They would be jumping around. They would be dancing. Now, here's the weird part. Sometimes they would start screaming. They would be chanting. They would dance until they got exhausted. Some would collapse. Some would just die from cardiac arrest.
But
The
what
ones
caused
that
this?
didn't die, they would just lay on the ground. They would be twitching. They'd be moaning. They'd be foaming at the mouth. And then
But
they
what
would
caused this?
well, there's a couple things that here's some other things that are kind of weird about it. Some of the people would be rolling around in the dirt. They would be squealing, acting like animals. Some of them would rip off their clothes. Sometimes they would start having sex with each other. Some people would be screaming at spectators to beat the bottom of their feet.
Wait, is this the 60s?
No, no. Now,
This is not the hippie 60s.
no, it's not. At the time, they thought the hysterical dancing was caused by demons possessing people. They thought it was a curse. They thought it was hot blood. They had other things that they were that they blamed it on. Now, they thought it was carefully organized. Some people thought it was like a religious cult that maybe just started this. The Romans and the Greeks used to have rituals where they would start frenzied dancing. But this was a little bit beyond that. Let's see. Now, one of the theories...
Was it drug induced, or is this? What did they ever come to the conclusion of
No
what it was?
one really knows what happened. Now, one theory is that it was caused by ergotism, which is poisoning produced by eating food affected by ergo. And it usually results in headache, vomiting, diarrhea, and gangrene. They call it St. Anthony's fire. But the thing is that, it can turn into seizures. It starts convulsions. It does hallucinations. But see, the thing is that the people that were dancing, they had a lot of the other symptoms, but they never got the gangrene. So that theory kind of went by the wayside. Now, another theory, which seems kind of reasonable, but I don't know when you think about it, it was because of the extreme stress that these people were under. Back then in the 1300s, there's a lot of things that would happen. They would have plagues. There was floods. There was poverty. So they figured maybe someone just snapped and just started hysterically these dancing movements, and then just everybody else just started joining in, like a mass hysteria.
Like monkey see, monkey do,
Yeah.
basically just jumping on it?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
You know what? It's not the only time that it happened. It happened a couple other times in history. Let's see. It happened again in July 1518 in Strasbourg. And this one started with just one woman. She began to dance in the street. And then all of a sudden, people started joining her. Now, this particular instance lasted a month. The numbers swelled to like hundreds. Let's see. There's another case that happened on Christmas Eve in 1021, again in Germany, where supposedly a group of people gathered outside a church while they were having the Christmas Eve Mass. They formed a ring, started chanting, and people said it was like a ring of sin. The priest came out, told them to stop, but they just kept dancing on and on. They thought that could have been a cult. They thought it could be possession. I mean, honestly, right now, there's no one's ever pinpointed a reason why this happens. Let's see. Sometimes it's called St. Vitus dance. I think Some people may be familiar with that term.
Saint Vitus?
St. Vitus. The association
It
with
seems
St.
to
Vitus.
have a lot of religious connotations to it. You know, Saint
Yeah.
Anthony, Saint John, Saint Vitus.
Well, you know what? You talked about the 60s. This actually happened again in 1962. This was another case of mass hysteria. This time it wasn't really related to dancing, but it was mass hysteria. It happened in Kashasha, Tanzania. And in the beginning, it started with 3 teenage girls just giggling and laughing uncontrollably. But as they were giggling, more and more kids in their school kept laughing and giggling. It spread throughout the school. It happened for about 4 months. It would start in groups. And then it got to the point where about 60% of the students were affected by this. They actually had to close the school. It started spreading to other schools. By the time this was over, 14 schools had been affected by this hysteria. Again, no one knows what causes this. It just all of a sudden starts happening. Let's see. Some people considered it, some people say that, like, dance raves that we have now is like a modern form of this dance mania. But see, raves, people that go to raves usually are on some kind of, I'm not going to say always, but you'll find high instances of chemical induced energy. Okay. These situations in these 3, the times that I mentioned, there's no record, there's nothing that points to them taking any kind of drugs or anything like that. And we're talking about, in the first one in Germany, you're talking about thousands of people that just are doing this. Now, the description of the first one, like I says, where they're writhing on the ground, where they are, swearing, almost like kind of like a Tourette's. And then, the sexual activity. I mean, it really, really sounds like a mass possession. A lot of this has to do, there seems to be a lot of religious connection to these things. I mean, some of the cures, priests would pray to St. John the Baptist. They tried performing mass exorcisms on the people while they were dancing. They even got musicians to play while they're dancing, trying to keep up with the movements. The thought was that if they met the tone, if they met the tempo of the dancing and then slowed down the music, that eventually that would get them to stop. That never did. In fact, it kind of backfired. Instead of getting them to stop when they started playing the music, more and more people started joining in. So I got a feeling, I got a feeling that maybe you may have the original group that was either possessed or whatever. But then you're adding music to it, so then people who are watching are saying, hey, this looks like fun, I guess I'll join in. Which could lead to the number swelling so big, but it's that original group. No one to this day knows why all of this started.
I have so many opinions. I'm trying to collect them all right now. Well, one, I'd love to know if you guys out there who are listening and watching, do you believe in this story? And what do you think is really happening here? I'm not sure about this one. I don't think that this is a possession of any kind. I think that, you know what this takes me back to, and this is kind of silly, but it sort of is a decent metaphor for this. The movie Footloose. There's a connotation that, I'm serious. I didn't laugh while you were talking.
I'm sorry.
But the idea that you have a group of people who are trying to have fun and release some stress and, dance, sing, and drink and have sex, whatever it is, that to the outsiders, to the religious fanatics, tend to think it is more demon possessed, that they are doing the deeds of the devil, and it is not, or it doesn't go according to what the standards are within their faith or religion. And so, like in the movie Footloose, it was condemned. It was, frowned upon, and it was actually made into a law, according to the movie, that they could not do these things. It correlates to it so much because, as you were talking about it, it's been called 3 different types of names, known names that we found: St. John, St. Anthony, and St. Vine. So, to me, it seems as though that there is this religious connection. There is this religious connotation to it, where, to the outsider of these groups, they are condemning what these people are doing. I can't see how, if there was a group of people that got together, and if it was some sort of, chemical imbalance or some poisoning of food of some sort, natural poisoning of some food of some sort, that there was no medical result from this, that there were no stories of doctors being involved or any medical professionals at the time, either in 1300s, 1500s, or in the 1960s, as you were stating. It just doesn't seem plausible to me that this is some sort of possession of some sort. Yes, it could be mass hysteria. It could be, where one person or a few people get together and do something, and everybody sort of is interested in it and wants to join in on that fun and go crazy, as Prince would say. It's that kind of public-induced hysteria or controlled-induced hysteria, mass hysteria, that is just, as you were saying, a release of stress, a release of tension. And, kids do it now. Kids did it back when I was young. I'm sure they've done it in hundreds years before that as well. It just, I don't know. I can't sit at the table with this one and have a straight face.
Well, there's a couple things that came to my mind when I was reading this and researching this. One, the first thing I thought of was the recent story that they have in Malaysia, where everybody is the mass hysteria that's happening there, because the schools, in the schools, they're saying that they're seeing these black specters, and
right.
Even teachers are saying that they see these apparitions. They
closed down the whole school system there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it mass hysteria? But then the other thing that I thought about, in France, oh God, I forgot. I don't know the date, and I should have looked it up, where the whole convent of nuns became supposedly possessed. There was a whole convent.
Oh, we did a story about that a while ago, didn't we?
Yeah, and that's what I thought of too. But not all of these instances were just teenagers. The first one in Germany, and it's interesting that we have 2 cases that happened in Germany. You're talking about adults. You're talking about, children. It didn't hit just one age group. Where the one in 1962 was teenagers. It was giggling teenagers that started it, and it went through the school system.
Right.
Even the one in Malaysia right now with the mass hysteria, it's not just the kids that are being affected by this. I mean, you actually have the teachers that are saying that they're seeing these apparitions too. I have no clue what it is. I mean, if you believe in possession, see, I kind of correlated it to the nuns that were possessed in France. Whatever the cause was to that. And it's really interesting because I don't know if you've ever seen...
But wait, before you go any further, the story about the nuns, and forgive me because I can't remember the exact story location of this, and hopefully we'll be able to find it, and we can post it on our Facebook page for you to fully research, but and I know Lucy's trying to do that right now as I'm talking. But the nun story was I believe, if I remember correctly, a little bit more of a horrific story. It wasn't a, happy-go-lucky dancing in the street story. It was, I guess you can say demonic. I hate using that word. But it was more of an evil content than the singing and dancing and hallucinating and sex and all that other stuff. So I think the two stories may be different. They could be the same, but I think they're completely different in the results of it, not just because of the reactions to what was going on. I think there was something else going on with the nun situation.
It was in Loudun, France. It was in 1634. They actually had a trial. They blamed it on witchcraft. They claimed that that the nuns were possessed by two demons.
And they killed people or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the whole convent that was possessed. They blamed it on the demons. It was 16 nuns that happened. They went to trial. See, the thing with the nuns, there was the sex that was involved. The nuns were basically, they were a bunch of horny nuns. I mean, that's the thing that I saw in the first one, where the people were dancing. But, excuse me, in addition to the dancing, we're talking about, writhing on the ground, foaming at the mouth, the sexual overtones, grabbing each other, having sex with it. I mean, it really was like a possession, the first one. The subsequent stories are a little bit different, where it's, just they get exhausted, they drop dead. But the first one, the first story, the first instance in Germany, the descriptions of what was happening included more than just the dancing. It was, for all intents and purposes, when you think about what they said they were doing, it does kind of sound like a possession. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Right, and I don't know that either, and I'm not saying it's false or true, but obviously it is truth because these instances did happen. I think the debate is over what caused it and what was the reason for it. But even today there are religious sectors or religious groups and communities where you see this happening inside their organization, inside their establishment, inside their quote-unquote churches, where people will fall down to their knees and shake uncontrollably, but it's in the form of receiving the Holy Spirit, receiving the grace from above, and it's the complete opposite of what we would call a possession. I just think that there are many people, and I'm not saying you do this because I know you don't, but I think there are a lot of people out there that put that connotation that there is some sort of negativity to these actions because they're quote-unquote not normal, and because they may go against what a community's beliefs are, or a group's faith is, that they put this connotation, this negative connotation towards it, which to me that's more of a realistic response to this, only because what's leading me there are the names, the St. John's, the St. Anthony's, the St. Pines, that somebody somebody outside who is defining what is going on, obviously, is putting that connotation that it is some sort of religious connection to it, and therefore making it a more of a demonic, or a more of a, something that the devil would do, or the devil coerced you to do. It could just be that, people just went a little nuts, went a little crazy. Maybe there were people who just, just tried to release their stress, and as we were saying before, people just saw it happening and noticed that there was attention to it, that they decided to jump on with it and see what else kind of attention they could get That happens now a lot of times with people. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of the reason for it. I certainly don't have the answer. It's certainly something that everyone should research a little bit more on if you find this interesting. I particularly don't, but it's an interesting debate where you're trying to find the reasons as to why. And because you found instances in history where it's happened several different times, within different centuries even, that there may be something to this idea. But I think for each instance in my mind, I don't think it's anything demonic. I think it's just either, it could be related to drugs, it could be just related to stress and tension of the community, of the town, or just things that have been going on that people just gave up and just decided to, what the hell, and did whatever they did.
Well, you know what's really interesting? We've got two instances of this happening in Germany, like this mass dancing, mass hysteria, whatever you want to call it. But then also, too, one of the stories that we did last Scary Facts was also Germany with the mass suicide. So is there something in the water in Germany that gets people all, it just doesn't affect one person? Things there seem to happen in mass. So I don't know. That's one thing that I found a little interesting when I was looking at this.
Well, there was one thing that started in Germany with one person, and that's Hitler. And there you've got a mass craziness that erupted in Germany. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but I'm just making a funny connotation. This whole story. When I knew you were going to do this story, I only read the title of it. I actually didn't do any research into it, not as in depth as I would have liked to or usually do. But the first thing that came to my mind was David Bowie. It's just dancing in the street. Did he come up with his song based on this history? It's a little bit funny to me. Not that I should make fun of it, but I don't know. This one, I've got a big question mark on it.
Well, you do know that there's been stories popping up about David Bowie and his interest in the occult, that a lot of his songs are based on occult knowledge, and that he supposedly had this very intense interest in things of the occult nature. So,
yeah, they've said that about many artists in the past, and we described that in the pop culture show that we did not too long ago, about how Satan and the devil and religious occults sort of weaved their way into the Hollywood scene, the music scene, the entertainment scene, basically. So if you haven't caught that show, go back in the archives and check it out. It was actually really interesting. And I think Leonard Skinner, I think we pretty much tapped out in that show and talked a whole hell of a lot about that. But interesting story, Lucy. I am not pulling anything away from this. Interesting, entertaining, I guess. I'll leave it up to everyone who's watching and listening to make their point.
Imagine being in at a football game, and then all of a sudden everybody's into the game and stuff. But then they all of a sudden start mass dancing and attacking people, and that's scary.
That's a real life Footloose movie.
Okay, so what do you got?
I got a few good stories here that I thought were interesting, and the first one that I actually want to talk about has been debated over the years. Actually, there was a film with the same name that was done not too long ago, starring Sean Penn, and I'm sure everybody out there has heard about, or maybe have not heard about, 21 grams, and the theory behind what this all means. So if you're not familiar with what 21 grams is, there was a doctor in the early 1900s named Duncan McDougall, and what he set out to do in 1901 specifically, actually this month, April 10th in 1901. What he set out to do was see whether or not the human body contains a soul. And the way that he tried to accomplish this was to weigh the body of the dying person right before they died and weigh them right after death. And he was convinced that the body lost weight within those two measurements. And he concluded that the soul actually has substance within your body. I don't know the full details. I don't know if it's matter. I don't know if it is actual substance. But he has claimed, and he came to the conclusion, that the soul does have weight. And that's where he comes up with 21 grams. I believe that's sort of like the average of the weight that was lost with his patients. Now, Dr. McDougall had 7 patients in his lineup to do this study. He was only actually able to get 3 conclusive pieces of evidence out of the 7. The other 4 patients, there was complications before the death or right at the death that he wasn't able to actually weigh the bodies, and so he wasn't able to compare the different weights. But he was able to get 3 good, significant outcomes from his patients. The first one that he actually weighed right after death lost 3/4 of an ounce. Now, to you and I, that's really not much of a difference. And take into consideration that he had already measured what the water within your body weighed, or how much water was in the body, how much air, and what that weighed in your body. So he took all the precautions to make sure that there was no other variables in this experiment that could be construed to the idea that that could be the reason why they lost the weight. So in his first patient, there was 3/4 of an ounce that was deducted from the body. The second patient, there was a full ounce of weight that was unaccounted for after death. And the third one that he was able to capture was a little bit strange in the way that it was conducted. Actually, not conducted, but and how he actually recorded, or how he was able to record the weight after death. When this third patient died, he weighed the body, and the body's weight, excuse me, the body's weight did not change at all. A minute later, he weighed the body again, and the body weighed, I think it was a couple of ounces. It doesn't say it here, sorry. A couple of ounces, here we go. A couple of ounces less than what it was prior to death. So he was a little bit perturbed, Dr. McDougall was a little bit perturbed as to why it waited so long, and he concluded that the spirit of the body was still encased in the body. It took a little bit longer, it lingered, and he compared it to the personality of the person, the characteristics of the person, and he stated that this person, this patient, was naturally slow in life. He actually, conducted the history of each of these patients to see whether or not there was anything that was relatable to the weight after he weighed them. And he concluded on this third patient that naturally this patient was slow in life, and he concluded that because of that, maybe the soul was slower in being exhumed from the body, or escaping the body. So my question, and he did this experiment in 1901 and died in 1920. He actually wasn't able to get any further research done. Obviously, things cost money, and because of the loss of the 4 other patients that he had, he wasn't able to do a huge thesis or theory behind this. There were many other doctors that assisted him in this experiment and came to the same conclusion. He also weighed the weights of animals and dogs. And he concluded with that experiment that the dogs weighed the same when they were alive as well as when they were dead. And to that, there was a slew of dogs that he actually had experimented on, and he concluded that actually dogs don't have souls. I'm not sure whether or not I believe that or not, but that's what his experiment concluded. He didn't go any further into experimenting on this. He tried to do or try to establish other means and other scientific theories, but never went back to this portion of it. I'm not sure why. I'm sure that if I did a little bit more deeper research, I would be able to figure out the reasons why. But I thought this was a good topic to talk about and get out there. Does the body contain a soul, and does the soul actually have form? Does it actually have a presence? In order for something to be weighed, it has to be something. There has to be matter attached to it, or whatever the terminology you want to use for this. There has to be something attached to it for it to actually have weight. I thought the experiment was very interesting. I thought that he was able to actually ascertain from the experiments and pull away all the variables that could negate his results, which I mentioned earlier about the air in the lungs, the water in the body, the blood in the body, and all of that stuff. That if there was anything lost, it would be accounted for, obviously. And so you can lose slight weight because you may be holding oxygen, and obviously you would weigh more if you were holding the water, and if that's released after the body has ceased, that he can account for that, and he did. So I bring this up as a topic to discuss because I think it goes through the gamut of all the paranormal groups that are out there that are trying to communicate with spirits, and how we all are trying to understand the afterlife and your soul, your consciousness, if that's what it is as well. Does it have weight? Do you believe, Lucy, and I'll pose it to everybody out there who just listen to what I had to say, do you guys believe that your soul has weight, has substance, that Dr. McDougall was able to capture and released afterwards, where you then lose that? Once you lose that soul, you lose that weight, you lose that matter in your body. Do you believe it?
I have problems with this theory. I really do. Because one, I totally believe that our souls, it's energy. The life force that's within us, the sense of our being. I believe it to be energy. I don't believe it to be, like this little liquid that we can put in a vial, or this little ectoplasm that we can, I don't believe that. I also have a problem with it because of the experiment with the dogs. I believe dogs have soul. I believe animals have souls just like we do. So what possible difference could it be that the dogs did not change, that their weight didn't change after they moved on? I have a problem with that. And then again, too, I know you say, the experiments say that he did take into account, like for the water and for the air that's in your lungs. But then we're talking about, I don't know if the experiment, if the reports say anything about it. I have a question about the heat, when we're alive, when the body is alive, it's warm. There's heat in there. While the body cools down, is that possible that can change? I mean, there's so many little things that can happen. Yes.
Well, I don't know if this is the right answer or not, but heat is energy. And
right.
So if you're not believing that energy has weight to it, then how could heat have weight to it and have a loss?
Well, that heat, does it change some kind of molecular structure within the body itself when it cools down? I mean, take an ice cube, okay? An ice cube is solid when it's frozen, when it's cold. But as it warms up, it becomes liquid. So, I never thought about that. Does an ice cube, when it melts, does it weigh the same as when it's frozen?
Say that again?
When you take an ice cube and it's a certain weight and it melts, does it remain the same weight? Does that liquid still weigh the same in the liquid form as when it was frozen?
Yes.
It does?
The mass has not changed.
Okay. I don't know. This one is like way above my head. I mean, I don't have the knowledge to really determine whether or not this is right or not. I can only go by what I believe, and I believe that the soul is energy. And I don't believe that that has a weight. And then also, too, the animals. I mean, I don't believe that animals don't have souls. That doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. So there's got to be some kind of difference.
One of the things that I found in the research that sort of went against or debated Dr. McDougall's research was, and it sort of goes along the lines of what you were talking about with heat and exhaustion and evaporation, sort of, that the body fights exhaustion or heat exhaustion or heat by sweating. Mm-hmm. Dogs pant. They pant. Dogs don't sweat. And so when we try to compensate the body temperature, our body releases liquid. Our body releases that through our pores. And so what people have said to negate his experiment was that in the process of dying, your body is actually working. Believe it or not, your body is actually... It's trying to fight, or it's trying to defend itself. It's trying to fight for life, basically. And so therefore, your body is heating up. And while it's heating up, your body is trying to compensate for that heat. And so it's releasing some sweat. So therefore, what people have said is that that release of the sweat, actually, if you contained it all, into a cup, it would weigh that 3/4 ounce. It would weigh that 1 ounce that Dr. McDougall is trying to, pull out there and say that is the weight of the soul. And the reason why you don't see that in dogs is because the dogs don't sweat, they pant. And they do that with their lungs to try and cool themselves and use their tongue to try and cool themselves down. And that's how they do it. They don't release any water. They don't release any sweat. And so therefore, obviously, then there's no body change. There's no body weight change. And therefore, that's the reason why. I can see that. I can see it's plausible. I'm sure, though, and I don't know, maybe he could have been biased while he was doing this experiment and neglected to account for those actions, and therefore conclude that the body, that the soul had a weight to it. I don't know, because there were also other doctors with him that came to the same conclusion about the weight, and I'm sure out of 3 or 4, how many were there with him, that I would think somebody would say, well, wait a minute, they're sweating. So therefore, that's the release of the water, and the release and the decrease in the weight.
Well, here's one other thing, and I'm not trying to be gross or anything, and I'm not really sure about this because I've never really looked into this. Yeah, the bowel movement. When a person dies, don't their bowels release? Okay.
Correct.
Let's say
but he did account for that.
Okay, but not everybody. I'm assuming not everybody is going to have the exact same amount of waste in their system. You might have someone who hasn't eaten, they've been ill. So they probably haven't eaten for quite a while. Is it possible that the waste in their body is of a lesser weight than someone who drops dead of a heart attack, who's been having regular meals, who's been eating?
Yeah, but he's not comparing body to body. He's comparing the same body from before death and after death. So the weight of the body has the containment of what you've just eaten as well as the waste excrement that's in your body. And if it hadn't been released when he weighed them, or if it was released, he accounted for that weight. That's what he did. So I don't think there was any discrepancy in that manner. I do believe in regards to this whole heating and sweating, and that could be a possibility.
I really have a problem with this theory. I do. I mean, it just does not. I don't have anything.
Well, you're not alone.
You know,
you're not alone.
It doesn't sound. It doesn't sound right to me, and I don't have the facts to back that up. All I know is that it just does not sound right to me, and because I truly believe that the soul doesn't have a weight. I really don't. I think, I mean, because when you talk about spirits and you talk about apparitions, you know, the things that we're searching for, they are still the same person, but yet they don't have the encumbrance of a physical body. That physical body, to me, is just a shell. No matter what this outside shell I have, I'm still me. And once I move to the other side, my soul, my energy is going to remain the same. I don't believe that it's tied to this body in this plane, in this existence. But I don't think the soul is that. It's not like a car battery. You know, you take it out of the car, you still got the car that's not moving, and here's this battery, and it weighs 5 pounds.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I don't believe
two
that.
things. Okay. And I don't think I do either. You know, I threw it out there as a topic to discuss, and you know that's what we're here for. Put everything on the table and discuss it. You know, there are some people who do believe it. You know, it is. Carolyn Abbey in chat is asking, has anybody else tried to replicate the study? No, they haven't, because they've deemed this as unethical. It's an unethical procedure and experiment, and so therefore nobody has dared to do it. I'm sure that there may be some, you know, pseudo-para scientists out there that may have done this in the closet and haven't released it because they don't want to be discriminated against. But I know that from what I have seen, that nobody has gone further into this, which is a kind of shame. I can understand the reasoning why that this may be unethical, but if someone were to donate for this study, you know, their body for it, that you know, it could be done. And I don't know if there's such a you know, if it exists out there. But that's a good question. So the other thing, though, and you know, I may be on the wrong path, but being a paranormal investigator, and there are many, many groups out there, and I'm sure everyone who is not in a group has watched those paranormal reality shows on TV, and where you have seen and heard footsteps from spirits. Now, you know, I know what it could possibly be and the reasoning for it, but to the regular human person, you would think in order to hear footsteps there has to be weight, there has to be a pressure, there has to be a force upon a force, and that resistance or that force against the other force has to have some sort of mass to it in order to create the sound or even the movement of the floorboard, of the bed, whatever it is. I personally think that that's energy that is created. And I believe that we are not fully capable of understanding what that energy can do at this point, obviously, because we are still alive. We are not dead. At least I hope you listeners out there are not dead, and you're listening to us alive. But I think that is energy. But there are some people that believe because of that, that there could possibly be this weight attached to an entity, to a spirit, and therefore creates that phenomenon.
Well, okay, some of the things that we've heard. Saddamsville, we heard steps running across the floor that we heard all the way in the basement. Now, whatever caused that sound obviously had enough force to make that sound on the floor. So
Right.
I still don't believe that it's like a mass that's making that. I agree with you that it's got to be energy. It's got to be the force of the energy that is creating that sound.
That's the only way that I can plausibly say that the reasoning for that to happen. You don't need weight or mass to move something. You don't need that. You need energy. You need just heat alone. People I'm sure people know what I'm talking about. I just don't know what it's called. But at Christmas time, when people have that sort of like it's a merry-go-round type of thing with candles on it, and you put the candles on and you light the candles, and the thing on the top spins around. Exactly. And so there's movement there, but there's nothing with mass that's actually turning it. It's the heat. It's the energy from the heat that is transforming the atmosphere around it to make it lighter than the air that was around it to begin with. And so when you make it lighter, you're able to actually turn that carousel around. And so therefore that's explained by energy. And so I'd sort of take that idea and put it towards, when people see things that are thrown off of a mantle, a book coming off a shelf, a footstep, your sheets being pulled off the bed. To me, that's the energy. You don't necessarily need to have any mass or weight for any of that to happen. You get slapped. Yes, there is that force. But to me, with all the knowledge that I have at this point right now, I can only say that it's energy. But I can fully understand why people believe that there is weight to it, because it just makes sense in that manner as well. I just lean towards more that it possibly is energy and it's not weight, and I don't agree with Dr. McDougall's results. That's just me.
Well, it's a rationalization. It's something that people don't understand. So what makes sense to them? It'll make sense. I can rationalize this because, yes, it's got weight, so that's what's causing the sound. Now, the one thing to think, do you believe in telekinesis? How can objects be moved just by power of the mind? Is that, is that mass? I mean, are we literally reaching out from our brains and pushing it, or is it the energy that's causing the movement?
It's to me, I think it's energy at this point. I think it's this whole field of paranormal is so new to everybody, and that's why I've always said this, and I know Lucy's always said this too. There are no experts in this field, and if you claim to be an expert, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that title. You may have done a lot of research on something, and you may know more instances or terminology or cases or case studies, but that doesn't necessarily make you an expert, because nothing has been defined as truth. And so if it hasn't been defined as truth, you can't be an expert in it. You can be an expert in understanding the topics, and an expert in understanding and learning about the different phenomenons out there, but we don't know the answers. It's all a guessing game at this point, and this is what we try and do, and I know you guys out there try and do this as well, is try and put the pieces of the puzzle together, and sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't, but when it does fit, sometimes it's just, it doesn't look right. I'm sure everybody has done puzzles in their lives, and you put a piece in there, yes, it fits, but does it match the scene? Is it the same colors that are surrounding? No. And so you pull it out and you try another one. That may fit as well, but again, is it the same color scheme? Does it match the graphic that's there? It may fit in there, but it may not match. And so you're playing around with everything and trying to figure out which is the best puzzle piece. Unfortunately for us, I don't think we're ever going to know what that exact puzzle piece is until we cross over. And, until we're able to experience it truthfully in real time.
Well, this one I don't believe.
All
And
right,
I'm no expert.
what's your next story?
Well, actually, I wanted to talk about this one. It's what happened at Anjikuni Lake, and it's the disappearance of a whole Inuit Native American village. It's not so much that the buildings or the houses or anything disappeared. We're talking about a whole village full of people that absolutely disappeared. There was no trace of them at all. And Anjikuni Lake is in the Kivalik region of rural Nunavut in Canada. It is, a spot where they fish, the people that were there. This was back in November of 1930. And there was a Canadian fur trapper named Joe LaBelle. And he had been working in the area. He would go, and then every once in a while he would stop in at this village. The villagers were friendly. He would be able to rest, recoup, and he was familiar. So whenever he would come back from a trapping expedition, he would stop by. Well, this particular November in 1930, he stops at, he's going to go to the village on his way back to where he was based out of. And when he gets to the village, instead of it being alive and full of people, kids, dogs, it's completely quiet. Absolutely quiet. Nothing moving whatsoever. Dogs, usually you could hear barking, you could hear the sounds of life. Nothing. The only sounds that he heard as he was walking was his own snowshoes in the snow. There were no signs of life. There were no smoke, usually because there was always fires going, people would be cooking, no smoke coming from any of the chimneys. He did notice that there was smoke from a fire off in the distance. So he walked towards it. When he got there, he discovered preparations for a meal, but that meal was never finished. It was ruined, it burned in the pan. He kept walking through the village. He started looking at the homes, to physically examine what happened, if there was any clues. There was nothing. All of the homes, they were still well stocked. The food, weapons were there. Nothing. He found in another one of the homes another meal that looked like they started cooking it and never finished it. Now, the thing that really is freaky about this, as he's walking through this village, it's snowy. There are no footsteps anywhere. There's no prints. There's nothing except his own footprints. There are no signs of struggle. There were no signs of anybody packing up, let's say if they had to leave in a hurry. There were no signs that anybody had packed up provisions or did anything. I mean, it's simply as if they just disappeared. There were 30 people in the village. There were men, women, and children. All 30 completely gone. No signs of struggle, nothing. All the food, all the arms, all the clothing were still laying there. Now, he, figured, okay, maybe they something happened, they went up into the hills, maybe they had to hide. But again, there was no tracks. He found no fresh tracks. He found the dogs. The dogs were still in the village, but every single one of those dogs starved to death. They had not been fed. Now, they're thinking that the village had probably been deserted for about 8 weeks, which would account for the dogs being starved. So he continued on to the nearest telegraph office, which was like a few miles away. He got to the telegraph office. On his way there is an isolated shack that belonged to another trapper and his 2 sons. Now, when he talked to them, they reported that they saw this huge cylindrical object that transformed into a bullet shape before heading towards the lake. Now, when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police went back to the village, they found that every grave in this area, in their burial ground, had been opened and were empty. The headstones from every single one of these graves had been neatly stacked in piles on either side of the graves. So it couldn't be animals, let's say, they thought maybe, animals rummaging, trying to find meat. Nothing. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they conducted a thorough investigation. They could not find a single reason as to what happened. They figured that the Inuit people had been missing for about 8 weeks. But the other question is that why did the dogs starve in just that 8-week time? And then also, too, why were those fires where the food was ruined, why were they still burning? They wouldn't last for 8 weeks. So these are just a couple of the things. There's still, to this day, there is no reason. There is no one knows what happened. And the only thing that I really found interesting about this was the report of the trapper that lived nearby and reporting this unidentified flying object. So, is this a case where a whole village was abducted? Does that explain how there are no tracks whatsoever? There's no signs of any struggle. And why would a whole village leave and not take food, not take clothing, not even take their weapons if they were being threatened? This one, to me, is kind of scary. Very scary.
It is odd. It is very strange. But it is not uncommon in history for, a whole culture of people, a whole community of people to disappear. There's, the Maya, who seem to be, from what I believe it's the Maya, correct? If I'm wrong, I will admit it, but I believe it was the Maya that disappeared. They created the Mayan calendar. They were a legitimate society. They were ruthless. They were brutal, but they were a well-oiled machine that ran for a pretty long time, and then poof, disappeared. There are many different cultures, in Mexico and all over, that even in South America, that they found that just disappeared. They don't know what. But in continuing research of this story, I don't know if you found this out, Lucy, but there's actually a connection with Betty and Barney Hill. Did you find that out?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
What's that connection?
So if everybody doesn't know or is not aware of the names Betty and Barney Hill, they were a couple, a mixed-race couple in the 60s that were abducted by aliens, or so they claim, and wrote a book called The Interrupted Journey to Lost Hours Aboard a Flying Saucer. Very famous case, one of the most intricate cases of alien abduction, one that still to this day has not been debunked completely. There are things associated with their story that many people have tried to debunk and have lost. And we actually spoke to the niece of Betty and Barney Hill a while back, and was a very interesting story, especially with the dress of Betty that she still had on her that had some sort of substance that nobody to this day can figure out what that substance is. But in any case, Betty and Barney Hill were actually on a boat of some sort, and they met I'm trying to read this right now, sorry. They met a captain who had done about 9 or 10 years research on this case, on this culture. And he came to the conclusion with everything that he had gone through. Now, again, I don't know if this is biased or not, that the entire tribe was abducted by a UFO and by aliens. And that is the reason why. And it intrigued Betty and Barney Hill, obviously, because of their story. Now, I don't know what this captain was doing, or how much extensive research he had done. But you yourself, Lucy, had just mentioned about a cigar-shaped, cylindrical type of UFO that somebody had reported being seen in or around the area. So, the question comes up then: was this, or is this, related to a UFO abduction? Or is this just a case of, just another lost culture, community, tribe that just died out, or tried to die out for whatever circumstances may have happened? Now, for the sake of argument, it's recorded also too that this person, Joe LaBelle, is that his name? That actually researched
the last name,
these.
Joe LaBelle, yeah.
Joe LaBelle. It is known that he came upon this site in November, in the winter months, and in this area, in this specific area where the tribe lived, during that time, it would have been negative 13 degrees, and so therefore, could they have moved to another location and settled somewhere else? And there's just no record of their continuing, generations, or the continuing life of that culture, of that community. Could that possibly it? I throw these variables out there because there could be many reasons why, unless people have exhausted them and found dead ends, then I can come back to try to figure out whether or not this was some sort of paranormal in nature. Now, you did mention, Lucy, some really odd instances where the graves were dug up and there are no bodies there, and that's kind of odd. Why would that happen? But I think there could be a reason to it. If they could no longer survive in that area, that they would bring their deceased loved ones with them and bury them again in whatever area that they decided to settle upon. And, obviously trying to keep their ancestors and their descendants close to them. And so, therefore, that could be a reason. I don't know for sure. That's just a guess that I'm having, based upon the little tiny knowledge that I have. But it kind of makes sense, no?
No. I don't believe...
Okay, give me a reason why. Don't just say no.
Okay. First off, if the situation was that dire, once these people were born, okay, and I'm just going by basic Native American culture, once these people were laid to rest, that ground is considered sacred, okay? It's highly unlikely that they would disturb them to move them. I really don't believe that happened, okay? The second thing, if something happened to these people, if there was some reason that they had to move their village because there's some whatever reason, why would they not take their provisions? Why would they not take their animals? Their dogs, okay? To the Native Americans, their animals are just as important as family. Why would they leave their dogs? That doesn't make sense, especially in this area of the country. The dogs were very important. They were part of hunting. They were part of travel, dog sled. So why would they leave that? And then the other thing that really kind of leads me to believe that this possibly could be a mass abduction was the description of the UFO that they saw. I mean, just even recently, in Mexico City, Popocatépetl, the volcano that's in the middle of Mexico City, has been, smoking, it has activity again. There are films that are posted online where you see a cigar-shaped silver UFO flying over the volcano. completely different time frames, completely different areas, but yet we have the same type of UFO, for lack of a better word. I mean, we don't know what it was. Okay, we're talking about this is back in 1930. It's you can't say it was a weather balloon. You can't say it was a missile test, something like that. It's highly unlikely that happened. The other question that I have about this is lack of tracks. Okay, nothing. Even if snow fell over, the tracks that were there, I'm sure this man, being a trapper, would be able to discern or to see that there's some kind of movement, just underneath whatever snow that fell on it. Then again, you have the two fires that are still going. If these people had been gone for 8 weeks, chances are they're not going to leave food cooking. I understand that if you're in a panic, it would have shown. It would have shown in, if you're in a panic and you're leaving somewhere very quickly, it's going to show. You're going to grab whatever. You're going to take everything out of the drawers and probably fling everything all around and grab, your valuables. Okay? You're not going to carry everything with you. This wasn't the case here. Everything was, this reminded me of the Dyatlov incident, where the tent is still in pristine condition, with the exception of the rip in the tent. Everything is still there. All of there was no sign of anything being torn up. This is the case with this village. I mean, if you didn't know anything was wrong and you walked into that house and you saw the food still over the fire, you would think that maybe they just stepped out to the back. Maybe they went to go get more firewood. But this is something that had been sitting there, and he said it was ruined. The food was ruined. So what happened? I can't believe that, this is a disappearing tribe or anything like that. Because even in the Maya, there are a lot of facts right now that point towards different things. And the disappearance of the Maya, I think, really gradually started happening. I don't think it happened overnight. I mean, you've got theories that it was because of water, it was because of the land itself no longer supporting the Maya people. This is different. This is very different. This is a case of just completely disappearing. Now, when I read about this, I thought about the colony in Virginia, the Roanoke colony that supposedly disappeared. Even that case, there are clues that show that maybe that village, they may have moved and were absorbed by possibly Indian tribes in the area. There's clues there that they can actually look towards. These people are completely gone. There's nothing that ties them to anything else. It's just as if they just disappeared. What I found that was scary was the graves. I don't believe that these people, if they left in such hurry, would have taken their bodies with them of the dead. I don't believe that. Because the basic belief in Native American culture is that your loved ones are with you, no matter what, in spirit. So if they were going to move forward, the spirits of those ancestors would always be with them. That body remains in that ground, in that sacred ground. So this one, I have to believe, I have no proof, but I have to believe this possibly could be a mass abduction of a whole village.
There's also, to burst people's bubble on this, including yours,
Okay.
there's also a report. A gentleman from Australia actually contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in 1988 to get specifics in regards to this case. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police stated that there is no such account for any of the story. that there was no search party sent out. There was no one such named as Joe LaBelle on any records in their files, and that there was actually, I believe, a book by someone named Frank Edwards in 1959, and in this book, in one of the chapters, it actually talks about and actually, clearly states out a story eerily very similar to this, and therefore there's the idea that this story was concocted to create something. I don't know what, but to create something, and it's just fictitious in nature, and nothing truly ever existed. This never existed. Nothing ever happened at that time.
It could be, but I really do tend to I believe it, because you're talking about 30 people, okay? Small village, I'm assuming back in 1930, maybe people weren't that concerned with them. They're Native American, I really believe that if something happened, I don't think it would have been a priority as if it would have been, the colony in Roanoke, okay? I just believe that if this truly happened, it could have been, just swept under the rug. It could have been ignored. It could have said, of course, people could have said, oh, it's nothing. You're only talking 30 people here. And I truly believe that back in 1930, I think the prejudices against Native people were probably a lot stronger than maybe they are today.
I agree with you, and we always say, even our own government, the cover-ups that happen, and the things that are not released, or the half-truths that are released from our own government is up for debate or skeptical about. So I can get that possibly the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are covering up. They don't think anything, and especially when it comes to Native Americans, even our own country has had very horrible history accounts with Native Americans. So could that be any different with the Canadian population and culture? So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this story.
I mean, okay, look at it this way. I know the Canadians are a little bit more forthcoming now with, disclosure about UFOs and stuff, but we're talking back in 1930. I would think that, we've seen it in different cases where law enforcement has always tended to not want to talk about this. They don't want to talk about UFOs or encounters like that. It's only recently that they're starting to admit and they're starting to come out. But back in 1930, I'm pretty sure that if something like this happened, they were never going to admit to it. They were never going to talk about it. So, I tend to believe that this might have really happened.
It's up for debate. As with all paranormal things, obviously people will state claim that it is truth. There are always going to be people out there that negate that and will, force their opinion from the other side of the fence in regards to it. It's just up to you guys who are listening to, figure out whether or not it's believable to you, and, do the research on your own. I think that that's an interesting case. I think, it could be clumped together with a lot of other mysterious disappearances from other tribes and cultures that are that have been documented truthfully, that we know of, within the entire world, all over different continents and countries. So it's, I keep saying this word plausible tonight, but it's plausible to happen. And there is a government cover-up. Who knows? It's a strange and scratch your head type of story. All right. I'm going to get into another story that I have, excuse me, that was really interesting, and I actually specifically looked for something within this topic to see if it existed, and voila, something popped up on this. You know, just getting off the whole Walking Dead, you know, fanfare, for I guess a lack of a better word. And to be honest with everybody out there, I don't watch Walking Dead, and boo-hoo, I know, hate me, throw tomatoes at me. I just don't. I have never gotten into it. I remember watching the first episode of Walking Dead, and that was it. Not that I didn't like it, I just never got, you know, hooked on it. Lucy over here is a fanatic, and she's a diehard. You know, I respect that. I'm a diehard in other shows, but Walking Dead was not mine. So anyway, just banking off of, you know, the finale and the climax of that series, I thought, well, is it possible for this type of zombie-like nature, or, you know, unnatural, for that case, I guess, to happen in the world? Could it happen? And I had researched whether or not there were cases in history, or current history, in regards to the effect on humans. And I did some research, I did find some stories, but they were deemed not plausible, or why am I using that word a lot tonight?
I don't know, but that's your word.
Is that the word of the day?
That's the
do we
word
get
of the
like
day.
points or a prize for every time I say that? I have no idea why I'm saying that a lot. Anyway, the you know, the whole phenomenon with zombies, it excites me. It actually interests me, and that's kind of weird because I don't watch Walking Dead. But anyway, I wanted to see if there was anything out there that was relatable to the human mass, and whether or not there's anything in history. And there was a few stories, and it just, you know, it was found out to be not truth. There were a lot of made-up stories about whole societies in Europe, or whole towns in Europe. I think there was one in Italy or Rome or something like that, where, you know, people were infected with this thing and ended up... no, I'm sorry, it was in England, and they ended up in... this is around the Shakespearean time, and they ended up in his theater to bombard themselves from the zombies that were outside the door of the theater, and they got their way in, and they tried to, you know, defend themselves, and bodies lying all around, and, you know, these zombie type creatures or whatever were trying to eat the flesh of everybody that was in the Shakespearean theater and on the stage, and, you know, it was basically all of a ploy, marketing ploy, as funny as that sounds, for Shakespeare and his new plays. And so there wasn't really anything out there that was believable. And but I kept digging, and I kept digging. And I found an interesting story, a very truthful and kind of weird and gruesome story that happens in the insect world. And yes, zombification happens in the insect world. There is a virus, or a fungus, there's a fungus, sorry, called, and I'm going to butcher this word, Ophiocordyceps. Ophiocordyceps. Yeah, I think that's it. It is the so-called zombie anti-fungi that happens with ants. And it's very strange and odd what this fungus does. It actually embeds itself in the food that these ants eat. And once it enters the body, it scurries up to the head of the ant. And it emits and secretes this stew, this pot stew or pot of chemicals. There's hundreds of chemicals that are released from this fungus into the head and the brain of the ant. It's kind of odd because science today is only able to decipher a few of these chemicals. They have no idea. There's unknown chemicals that are emitted from this fungus that science, as of today, as of tonight, while we talk about this, do not know what it is, or cannot pull it out and study it. There's no way. They have no idea what it is. That in itself is pretty interesting. And so, to go along with this zombification story, this fungus secretes these chemicals that intercept the nervous system of the brain and the nervous system of the ant. It sort of melts away the brain, and this fungus becomes the new brain of the ant body, and it attaches itself to the nervous system. So therefore, you've basically invaded, if you are this fungus, you've invaded the body of an ant, and you've taken control of its functions. You have killed what is the essence of the ant, and you are now taking over the body of it. And what this thing does is actually sprout out the back of the head of the ant this stalk. It's like this weird stalk-like thing, and it is it's an extension of this fungus. It's sort of like another limb of some sort. And this fungus then, obviously the ant is dead at this point, but what the fungus does is actually take the body and uses it for its bidding. It actually will use the body of this ant to continually spread this fungus to the community of the ant tribe, or the village of the ants, or to anything else that's within its path. It only affects ants as far as we know right now. It does not affect any other insect or any other species. If it does come in contact with bees or flies or whatever, it will actually just kill it. It won't use it at all. And nobody's certain yet whether or not it's done on purpose. But what's more interesting, what's more frightful about this fungus is that when it secretes these chemicals in the head of the ant, scientists have actually found that, let's just say for instance, there's 100 chemicals that this fungus can emit or secrete into the head of an ant. In certain ants, it may secrete 60. In others, it may secrete 40. In some others, it may secrete 100. And the reason for that is purposefully. It's not just, spontaneous. It's not just, oh, well, that's just the amount of chemicals that could be released in the head of that particular ant. No, what it does is actually analyze the brain of the ant. And it will only secrete the actual chemicals that it needs for that carcass to take it over. It's a thinking fungus. It's a working and intelligent fungus. To me, that is so crazy. That is so odd, and it's so evil. It's so hard. You can't even. I mean, that's a movie right there to me. It's strange and it's odd, and it makes you question this metamorphosize. Can this grow bigger than what it is, stronger than what it is? You all have heard out there how the flu virus has changed over the years. How many different diseases and sicknesses that we all have become repellent to the antibiotics and the antibodies that we create in science and in pharmaceutical science. And it mutates, it changes, it adapts to the defense. It creates a better defense so that it can, it's the survival of the fittest. It tries to keep itself going further and further. Could one day, probably not in my lifetime or in your lifetime, but could one day this fungus mutate to actually create a reality of The Walking Dead? Real life Walking Dead.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because it wasn't in relation to anything. I was going through articles, you know, like to post, and I did come across one that talks about, does fungus have a consciousness?
Hmm.
And the whole basis is that, you know, just like you said, fungus has the capability of adapting to its environment. It changes. Things can change. Does it? And like you said, in the case of the ants, it sits down and it figures out what it needs to do for this particular carcass. Isn't
That's a living being. That is,
that's
and it. I
that's
mean,
a conscious
I'm
decision.
laughing as I say it, but it's intelligent.
Yeah.
It's alive. I mean, I know it's alive, but I mean alive, like human alive.
It's thinking. It's actually figuring. It's making decisions. It is reasoning. Okay, for this carcass, I need to do this, this, and this. So what's
Right.
to
It's
stop
analyzing.
what's to stop it from the ants and eventually, oh, look, there's a human being. That's even better. I mean, what's to stop it? I mean, I know I'm going back into my Walking Dead comic books right now, but, you know, and the whole basis of The Walking Dead is that the thing that turns everybody into zombies is within us. We all carry it, okay? So it becomes active once the body is dead. And the only way that you can stop it, you have to, you know, damage the brain. That's the only way that you can stop it. But we're talking about something that's within us. Now, with these ants, you have a fungus that's getting into the brain. It's making a conscious decision of what it needs to do. What in God's name is going to stop this from moving to different species? You know, today it's ants. Tomorrow it might be cats. And then after cats, then it's going to be us. You know?
The zombie apocalypse. Get ready. I mean, it's
Mind-boggling.
it's unbelievable. It's you know, it sort of really makes you think. You know, when I first started to do the research on this, I thought, okay, I may find stuff in history, and you know, something that may not be relatable, or some story that people think of it. And there was a story, I can't remember where, but I know that it had to do with the syphilis disease. And okay, everybody start laughing right now. But yes, it had to do with the syphilis disease, and this was before people understood and the medical communities knew what syphilis was, and you know, obviously didn't have any antibiotics for this, or any sort of remedy for it at all. And so, as they were, I guess, trying to, as they were being afflicted with the syphilis disease, you know, it eats away at your body. You know, it eats away at your genitals. It eats away at your face. Everything that you touch, basically, becomes infected. And so there's a story about, and again, forgive me, I can't remember where, but I'm sure if you Google syphilis and zombie, you may be able to find this story somewhere online, that people were roaming the streets, not dancing as you were talking about before, but actually, you know, body skin and pieces of their nose or their face and their genitals were just falling off. Mm-hmm. And it was just, they were being eaten alive, and they were walking around in the streets moaning and screaming and crying and just dropping dead. You know, there was nothing that anybody could do, and so they were writhing in pain. And so people equated that to a zombie effect. Yes, you can equate that action as being a zombification of a person, but it's not necessarily, it's not being zombified, if that's a word. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's not a matter of something taking control over the brain, over the nervous system, over your mobility and thinking and analyzing portion where you're not you anymore. That's not it. It's just people walking around with body parts and limbs and face and skin coming off and then just dying and screaming in pain. It sort of looks like a zombie thing. And so that's the only, other than the other Shakespearean one, that's really the only types of stories that are out there within human beings. And so, I wanted to push a little bit further, and that's how I found this story within the insect world. But as with evolution, things change over time. I believe in evolution. I'm sure the religious folks out there are going to hate me and, shut up the show right now. But I don't care. I believe in evolution. That's my belief. And so over the years, things change. Things morphosize. Things mutate. I believe that's how we were here. That's how we became us. And so could in, maybe 1,000,000 years or 1,000 years, this fungus mutates because it's trying to survive over the years. Does it, if it has the ability to analyze while it is infecting the head of that ant, who's to say that it doesn't have the ability to expand upon that ability, that way of expressing its intellect to become more intelligent, to understand what it means to survive more, or to survive longer, or to embed itself in a host that's better than an ant, that could be a rat, or that could be a dog, or that could be a human being. It just makes you think.
Well, okay, one question I've got here, okay? So you don't think that it's just like an automatic reaction, not something that has to be calculated? It's an automatic reaction. I mean, like, take a plant.
What do you mean, what's the automatic reaction?
That it adapts to whatever host it has. It just automatically.
The secretion of the chemicals you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, because I'm thinking in terms of like a plant. You put a plant in sunlight, and it's going to naturally bend towards, or it's going to move towards that light. Do you believe that plant is making a conscious decision? Oh, here's sunlight, I'm going to lean this way. Or could it be an automatic reaction that somehow in this fungus DNA that, if A happens, then B will happen?
No, there's, I'm just reading up again on where I found this info, that the scientists who were studying this actually were able to contain the chemicals from this fungus and were injecting it into the insects so that they can study it better. They basically to have a controlled study or experiment. And so they were doing this. And they found that the fungus produced a different chemical cocktail for each ant species, that they were able to decide because of the characteristics of each of the different ants. It was measurable to the different chemicals that were being released in order to fulfill its deed, and it's recorded. It's been documented by the science in regards to that matter. So I don't know again, and I haven't gone fully in depth into this fungus, but it could very well be blindly just shooting out different types of chemicals, but I think that would have been noted by the scientists right off the bat. And if science is stating that the host is what they're calling it, the quote unquote host, knows the brains that it's targeting and deciphers it, then to me it's a little bit more believable than someone who doesn't have that scientific background. If someone's doesn't have that scientific background, to say it could be just shooting out chemicals left and right and not really having any consciousness or an intellect in what it's doing.
That's pretty scary. But I just want to mention something. I typed in syphilis just to see if I found anything, and it's got a list of 10 people in history that may have had it, And on this list is Abraham Lincoln.
What do you mean, 10 people in the world that have had syphilis?
No. 10 people in
There's
history.
more people in the world.
Yeah, but I mean, of famous historical people, Abraham Lincoln's on this list. He had syphilis.
Is that funny?
Yeah, I mean, this being an election year, I mean, that's like mind-boggling. Abraham Lincoln?
It's funny. It's funny that you say that, and we are tangent people. We like to go on tangents a lot of times, as you just did right now. But it's funny that you bring up Lincoln, because I was actually, in doing research for tonight, I actually pulled upon a story about the assassination of Lincoln, and again, forgive me, I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was a general within the military that was with Lincoln and his wife. In the booth, in the balcony, where Booth killed the president, and actually almost killed this general. Like, again, I forget his name. Forgive me. And so I was reading the story, and it actually went into a you'd think, okay, he tried to save the president. He didn't succeed. He was maimed and hurt really badly, really seriously, but survived. This general that was with him in the balcony, and went on to marry the woman that he was actually with, Lincoln and Lincoln's wife. And after he got married, his life went completely downhill and mirrored the death scene of Abraham Lincoln. That this general actually tried to kill his children, and in trying to do so, his wife stepped in, and while his wife stepped in, he killed his wife, shot her and stabbed her, and then tried to kill himself, and wasn't successful in killing himself. Spent the remaining year, this is when he was like 40, 45, spent the remaining years of his life in a mental institution, and went crazy, and never forgave himself for not saving President Lincoln. And I thought that was a weird story, and it's funny that you just brought that up, because I was just reading that last night. General chlamydia. What is this? I'm just reading chat right now, and I see General chlamydia.
That's why I was laughing. That's the name of the general that you were talking about.
Carolyn Abbey, you're hysterical.
Okay. But okay, I'm sure so in your zombie research, you did come across the stories about the voodoo zombies, okay? That,
Well, yes, the Haitian voodoos and the stories within that, yes. I wanted to go in that direction, but it's a story, and I can't stand on a pulpit and say that it is truth. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of tonight's show is talking about true scary stories. I believe it, yes, but there's no real hard evidence that it is factual. And so, yes, I could have gone down that road, and believe me, there are horrific stories in regards to Haitian voodoo, even zombies in Louisiana. And so, I could have gone down that road, but I couldn't safely say that they were truthful stories. It's just stories from the
guy, the scientist who wrote The Serpent and the Rainbow, Wade Davis. I mean, his claims have been people are saying that his claims aren't real, but I mean, he does talk about the powder that could poison victims, the neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, which can be found in several animals, including pufferfish. So, I mean, there's so many things that we don't know about this, and I know that many people came after him and said, oh, it's not true, but, who's to say? I mean, if, here we go again, that there's that line that if science cannot prove it to a point, if there is not that chain that gives you all the facts, then therefore it doesn't exist.
No, I don't believe in that train of thought. Obviously, we believe in the paranormal, and that
Mhm.
has not been proven by science. So yes, I can do that. But I think just for the sake of putting on a show about truthful, historic, horrific, factual stories, scary stories. For me, I couldn't come on the air and say that those were factual. It's based on my belief, and obviously certainly other people's beliefs, but I couldn't say that it was factual. And that's sort of the reason why I sort of came up with some of these other stories that we discussed tonight.
Do you believe we only have 14 minutes left?
I know. I can't believe it. I just noticed that. Is there something that a short story that you can, we can squeeze in one more before we go? Something that was interesting, or I don't know,
Yeah, my
something
last
that
story
caught your
that I
eye?
had, it's a little short one and it's not scary, and I don't know if it's a fact, but it's about Prince. Um,
Well, that's
and
a completely opposite of what the show is. If it's not scary and it's not truthful,
yeah, but it's
I'm kidding. I'm
it's.
kidding. I'm kidding.
I just thought it was, I was looking through all these other stories trying to find facts and stuff, and this just caught my eye, with Prince moving on. Um, when he was a child, he had epilepsy. He was prone to having seizures. And at one point, those seizures stopped. And he went to his mother. There's a story that was posted, and I'm trying to get to it. And he was epileptic, okay? And a lot of people say that he's not of this world, that because of his music and just the way he was, that he has a connection to the fairies, has a connection to the other worlds. But he, let's see, in 2009 he told a story, and this is according to his mother, that he had an encounter with an angel who cured him of his childhood epilepsy. And he said that he never spoke about it before, but he had been born epileptic, and he used to have those seizures. And his mother and father didn't know how to, how to handle it. They didn't know what to do. They did the best that they can. And one day he walked in and told his mother, "Mom, I'm not going to be sick anymore." And she said, "Why?" And he said, "An angel told me so." So I just thought that was cute, and I really liked it, and I really want to believe that this is a fact, that the angels came to Prince and cured him.
I mean, that's a great story. There's a lot of stories that are coming out about Prince that are, I don't know. It's funny how it always happens when somebody dies. Everybody, the cockroaches come out from,
Oh yeah.
the shadows and start to spread things. And, I'm not a die-hard Prince fan. I liked his music. I appreciated, I respected him. I'm not a fanatic. But I know that there are other people out there, obviously, who entrusted their life within his music and connected with him in his music, which I think is awesome, because I think he did express something of another level. I think within himself and within his music, and he was very truthful. There was actually an interview that I watched not too long ago that happened, I think, in 2007, or it may have been recent, I'm not even sure, where he talked about chemtrails and how, he believed in the idea that the government was, poisoning us, was manipulating the environment with these chemtrails. And, he was a proponent of speaking out and sharing your voice with others. And so, I respect that in someone. And I think that, I don't know where I'm going with this story, but I think that he sort of is a really great example of someone who believes in passion, is able to convey compassion, and be truthful to himself and others. And regardless of whatever he did, whatever happened in his personal life, he married and divorced a few times, and whatever else may have been going on, I think he because he was very private, that's his prerogative to do, and so it wasn't glorified in public, and he was able to create that character that people loved, and to fulfill what his audience wanted, and that was great music, great voice, great meaning. And so with a story about him having epilepsy, and an angel coming to him and sort of resolving and remedying that ailment, sort of only adds to the persona that Prince is, or Prince was, which I admire.
He was pure magic. He really was. I saw him in concert, and I'm just telling you, he was magic. And the thing that I'm really impressed about is the fact that he was very aware of things that are going on. And it's kind of like there's, when you think about people in the music industry, when you think about, rock stars, for a better word, you think of them, as being very not concerned with the rest of the world. And he's one of a couple of guys in the music, people in the music business that are very aware. The other one that comes to mind is Tom DeLonge, of Blink 182, who's become very active in UFO disclosure. Another one is Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins. He's become very vocal about government, interference, things like that. So Prince is just one of a few people in the music industry who really are a lot more than the persona that they put on stage. And, I'm not going to say that I was a Prince fanatic, but I saw this story. I thought it was really cute. It really, struck me, and it just adds to the magic that Prince was. And, it's a loss, so
I was talking to somebody the other day. Thank you for that. And, I was talking to someone the other day about, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but you can't hear me?
Okay, we're having a little technical difficulty. I can see Anthony speaking, but I can't hear him.
Can anybody hear me?
So, we're trying to see what's happening here. But just basically what I was trying. There, now I can hear you.
I don't know what happened.
No, now you went away again.
Can everybody hear me who's listening right now? It seems like they can hear me, but you can't?
Okay, I can't hear him. So everybody in the chat room says that they can hear you. I can't hear you.
Well, what's wrong with your phone? Did you press mute? Or something?
Your sound is going in and out.
Can you hear me?
Nope, can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I
feel like a Verizon commercial.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to redial.
Alright, Lucy dropped the call. Can you guys hear me? Just wondering if my voice is going over the air, or if this is Lucy. But I believe you guys can hear me. Okay, thank you, Red. So you guys can hear me. There may have been something then wrong with Lucy's phone, which is weird because I can hear her on my end.
You keep going in and out. I can barely hear you. And I just redialed in.
Her. I can't hear you, Lucy. You're on mute.
Hello?
Now I can hear you. Can you hear me? Alright, Lucy hung up again.
No, I didn't. I'm here.
Oh,
You hear me?
yes. Now, can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. I don't know what happened. It was Prince.
Maybe it was Prince. But what I was trying to say before was has anybody realized that fungus is growing in Lucy's earphones? Thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn, you were on a roll tonight in chat room. Um, has anybody realized the deaths that have been occurring within 2016? It is extremely odd and weird and strange. And if I'm just talking really about celebrity-wise. I've just noticed a lot more of that popping up in the news lately, and it's the other thing along with that is if you go back and look at the ages of everyone that has passed on this year, again, celebrity-wise, most of them are in their 60s or late 50s. I don't know if that's anything, but it seems that there's a lot of sixes. And
Stop looking at me. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not looking at you.
I'm not going anywhere.
But it's very odd, for 2016. I can't recall anything like this ever happening before in history, where there were so many known, celebrity deaths in a particular time period, a short particular time period, as we're experiencing now. And I mentioned it to somebody, and they were talking. Is this the rapture? Is it that the gods above are just snapping away the people and bringing them to heaven? But then I'm thinking, well, there's some people that just died that I don't think were good people or considered to be good people, and so I'm not sure about a rapture and that sort. But it's kind of strange. It's kind of odd. There's actually people, on radio, even doing shows about, the mysterious deaths, or what they're considering mysterious deaths. But I just wanted to pop that out there. That's one little last story to keep you up at night tonight to think about.
It's the baby
Lucy,
boomer generation, okay? That's what it is.
I don't think so. They're too young. Why don't you get to the fan of the week?
Okay, this week our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week is Christina Sullivan of Elko, Nevada. Christina is a member of the Paranormal Review Radio fan group. Her likes: Fear the Walking Dead, Paranormal Lockdown, That Metal Show, Jimi Hendrix, Adele, and of course she likes Paranormal Review Radio.
Yeah. Congratulations, Christina. And don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, just like us on Facebook or subscribe below on YouTube.
Well, you know what? Tonight we talked about scary facts. We talked about mysteries. But you know what? The greatest mystery of all is the afterlife. What happens after we die? Now, in his book, which is called Flipside, A Tourist's Guide on How to Navigate the Afterlife, author and award-winning filmmaker Richard Martini explores startling new evidence for life after death via Life Between Lives, where we reportedly return to find our loved ones, soulmates, and spiritual teachers. Based on the evidence of thousands of people who claim that under deep hypnosis they saw and experienced the same basic things about the afterlife. It is a journey that Richard himself undertook with amazing results. Please join us next Friday night as we take a trip into the unknown with Richard. It's going to be an eye-opening conversation that you won't want to miss. Thank you, everyone, friends, family, and new listeners. No matter where in the world you are, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Thank you, Anthony, for everything you do each week. You are my hero. So, until next week, dear friends, never stop questioning and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.